The Beltway. Peter, thank you very much. Let's turn to some auto experts now. We've got Jeff Savage. He is founder and publisher of AutoFile. He joins us from Morgan Hill, California. And Lauren Fix, the car coach, is an automotive expert. She's in Rochester, New York. And shortly, Peter DiLorenzo, he's publisher of Auto Extremist. Oh, he popped up there. Good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. Let me, Peter, go to you first, if I can. You believe, I guess, that it's inevitable that Chrysler is going to go into Chapter 11, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I don't see them escaping that at this point.
So what happens? Describe for us, you know, the blow-by-blow of what happens after they declare bankruptcy.
After they declare bankruptcy, I would say that, first of all, Sergio Marchionne from Fiat will be very happy. Yeah. And also Carlos Ghosn from Renault will be very happy because they will set about to picking apart Chrysler and taking what they feel is worthwhile. The other problem with the bankruptcy or the other scenario is the dealers are going to be in dire straits, the suppliers are going to be in dire straits, and it's going to affect a lot of other industries and car companies around this country.
Well, Jeff Savage, let's just deal with the Fiat issue first, because it bugs the hell out of me that the taxpayer is left holding an empty bag here. We put out billions of dollars for Chrysler. You know, the head of Chrysler is very happy about being able to strip it bare from everything except, you know, the chaff rather than the wheat. So what does the taxpayer get for all that?
I don't think the taxpayer gets very much. Talking about what your other guest just talked about, Fiat's got deep financial problems of its own. It went to the ECB to try to get a $6 billion loan and was turned down. Renault has been living, Renault, which owns 47% of Nissan. Renault had a good year last year, but Nissan's in serious trouble. Renault's trying to cover their losses. They had to get a $3 billion euro loan from the French government. We, the taxpayers, have put $5.5 billion into Chrysler. And David, I have not heard this confirmed yet, but I was told 4 months ago that this deal, if it goes through, Fiat gets salvage rights ahead of the U.S. taxpayers if Chrysler is put into bankruptcy.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Lauren, let me just switch to you if I can to repeat that. Is it conceivable that Fiat could end up getting a better deal than the taxpayer in terms of getting paid off if there's a bankruptcy here?
Absolutely, and Jeff is right. This is something that we in the industry are very aware of. I mean, also to think who owns part of this. Cerberus announced today that they're just going to write off their ownership of Chrysler. So what does that leave us? Well, 19% is owned by a holding company out of Abu Dhabi. And then, of course, us as consumers, we own a portion of it. We're not going to get anything. Fiat's going to have first rights. And you know what they want to do. They're going to pick it apart, just like they said. They're going to want to go after the ones that are selling, the 7 product lines that Jeep has it selling, and the people that are going to suffer is us as consumers, the auto workers, both white-collar and blue-collar workers, and unfortunately the dealers that bought franchises.
But Lauren, this whole bailout was sold to Americans on the basis of saying we need a U.S.-based car company. But clearly, we're giving it over to the Italians. I mean, what happened to that original intent in the bailout?
I've never heard of anything like this in my life, where consumer taxes are going to pay off somebody else's debt. And then, if they fail, we're going to give the company to absurd. I mean, this is one of those things where you want to have a tea party for. You want to stand up and say, wait a minute. This is our tax dollars. This is absurd. I mean, Ford is working things out. GM's working things out, and Chrysler we're going to give away?
Peter,
that's absurd.
Peter, is anybody other than us talking about the absurdity of this and that this is something that taxpayers should not be on the hook for?
Well, I was railing against the fact that Chrysler went to Washington in December anyway. Chrysler is a private company owned by Cerberus.
Absolutely.
And they had no business going in front of the taxpayers as it was. They were a failed company 8 months ago.
And of course, Jeff Savage, we know they only put, what, about 7 to 8% of their own capital into Chrysler. Cerberus did, this private equity firm, right?
Yeah, but there's another point on all this. Second quarter 2008, Cerberus owns 51% of GMAC, and that $30 billion loss at GMAC because of ResCap and Dytek, the mortgages again, had put GM on its side, and I think it took the wind out of sales of Cerberus, and that's why suddenly there was no funding for Chrysler. So I think that 7% figure, David, I think Cerberus, I heard last night that they are trying to either spin off or do a merger with their operation in Japan, Aozora, with another bank in Japan. So I think Cerberus has its own financial issues, and they probably just can't afford to continue to finance Chrysler.
Well, it's hard for me to leave the Chrysler issue because it's so guiling that the taxpayers are being put on the hook for the Italians. But Lauren, let's turn to GM if we can. They've already taken about $15.4 billion. They want another $11.6 billion. Of course, the taxpayer would be the major stockholder in that case. What is worse for the taxpayer, for GM to just continue to get government payouts or to finally go bankrupt?
Well, that's the problem. You know, initially when GM said they were going to go bankrupt, we all said, you know, you can't do that. There's so many jobs at stake. But now they've shut down Pontiac. They're shutting down Saturn. They're shutting down Hummer. Saab is gone. What's going to be left? All these franchisees that put all this money in are going to be stuck. Now they're talking about cutting the dealer chain in half, essentially. And besides that, of all the money they've taken in on loans, they're trying to get the U.S. government, which would be us as taxpayers, to take 50% of their common shares in ownership. Do you want our U.S. government to tell us what we're going to drive? I certainly don't, because we'll be driving beige, boring hybrids that we don't want.
Boy, that's for darn sure. You guys are great. Thank you very much. What a terrific trio. We appreciate you folks coming. Coming up on deck, so what does a Pontiac dealer who spent his entire life loving and selling Pontiacs do now? We're going to be asking one of the best in the business when we continue. And what do you think? GM sending Pontiac to the auto graveyard. Is that a buy, a sell, or a hold? Text us at 369-249. Your answers coming up.